Welcome to episode 103 of Auto Off Topic.
103. Did we do 102?
We did do 102.
I've argued this for too many times, but I feel like just 2 episodes ago was 100. And then we did 101.
Yeah,
Yeah?
and then we did 102.
Okay.
I'll go to the notes if you want.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
Is this how we're going to start?
Nope, because I just checked it, and this is 103.
All right. Good job.
Sorry. I've been yelled at for arguing episode numbers with you before, so I'm sure I will be again.
I was on it this time. There was one time, though, you were right, and
I think that's what happened.
I
was
beat you
right,
down.
I was right once, and
Yeah.
how I just,
Yeah, I had to apologize.
riding that wave.
You were right, and then I apologized to you on the next one. I don't even remember what numbers those were. Long time ago.
Yeah.
OG listeners
You
will
didn't remember
get it.
then either, remember?
What?
You didn't remember then either, remember?
Nope.
That was the whole point.
All right, so corrections. This is episode 103.
That's not a correction. It was right in the first place. Corrections, Brad is wrong.
All right, quick project car updates. Fog light bulb in the Gallant burnt out like years ago, and I just never got around to changing it until like the
Did you
other
say
day.
years?
Years ago.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I just never got around to changing it, and I swapped it out because apparently it looks like I hit maybe the bumper against something on the bottom and it cracked the glass.
It could have been cracked from a rock off a tire in front of you, too. Who knows?
It wasn't on the face of it though; it was on the very bottom edge.
Yeah, doesn't.
Like the bumper flexed and cracked it. Whatever. Moisture got in there and it ruined the bulb, so I swapped it out, and I've got a fresh one. I've got a fresh fog light
Mm-hmm.
that I'll swap back in after road tripping the car because
Yeah, we're driving it like 2,000 miles in the next, or
Yeah.
almost 3,000, right? No, 2,000 miles.
2000. So I'll put because I'd put the new one in, and then a rock would go through it. So
Likely.
Yeah.
And you should put not when you put it in, you should get some like Mylar clear cover for it too, just to protect against smaller rocks.
yeah, that would probably help. And then I gave it like a really good deep cleaning. I didn't wax it because I did wax it well in the beginning of the year, and I hadn't driven out in the weather very much. So a little spray wax looks good. Clean the inside of the windows. Wipe down every surface. Tried to condition the leather best I could.
Mm-hmm.
You know what is interesting? Something in the new types of cleaning products, or these cars are just getting so old that I was using glass cleaner, like glass cleaner that's made for window tint, so you think it's pretty, like not
Benign.
very
Yeah.
aggressive. It took the logography. What am I trying to say here? Lomography? No, what's screen printing on switches? There's a name for it, and
Yeah,
I'm messing it up.
you're close, but I don't know exactly
I'm
either.
completely
so.
butchering it. Lithography. That's it. It wiped that white stuff off the window switches, and then was starting to do it on like the turn signals.
Oh, that's weird.
It's super weird. And then like, I was like, that's weird. So then I tried it with like Armor All, and Armor All did it, and like a bunch of cleaning products are doing it. So either they're getting to the point where they're so old.
I think lomography was the right word in
Yeah.
the first place.
So either they're just getting super old, or like maybe there's a super high alcohol content in these cleaners to help them evaporate or something.
I don't know. That's weird. Well, I used what I thought was a fairly benign cleaner on the dashboard of the 80 Colt, and it literally wiped the tan color off of the instrument panel binnacle.
Oof.
Yeah, I found another one online, thankfully,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, so something to be careful of with 80s, 90s cars. Apparently,
Yep.
new cleaning products are not treating them very well, which is weird because I used to clean the Talon all the time with stuff
the
like
same
that.
stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's just age. Kind of a bummer, but whatever. Now that I know, I'll just be more careful.
Lesson learned.
So
I think I have spare switches and stuff if you need them anyway.
I do need to figure out what's wrong with the master switch because the passenger window will go down but not up from it.
But it goes down from the passenger side?
It goes
mean,
up and
back up,
down
yeah.
from the passenger side,
Okay.
but it won't go up and down. It'll only go down from the driver's side.
That's okay.
Yeah.
For now, anyway. We'll fix it obviously later.
Yeah, it's one of those things you continue to forget about until you get in the car again.
And you have to reach across to operate your power windows.
Well, it's a pretty small car, luckily, so. But yeah, I cleaned all the. I gotta figure out a better way. I need to find a high quality product for leather care, something that can bring back old leather.
There are products out there, but they usually necessitate pulling the covers off the seats and soaking them. That's the problem.
That would be worth it because one of the seats needs repair because it's splitting at the seams.
Yeah, you got to make it soft again so it doesn't just resplit after you repair it.
Yeah. Because otherwise, the leather is not in bad shape in that car. It just
No, it's
is
just kind
hard
of
as a
hard.
rock.
Yeah.
So that would be nice to do that and just save it. And then the carpet could be re-dyed, but actually that'd be a good time to do it when you take the seats out
Do it all at once,
because it has to all come out.
refreshing the whole interior,
Yeah.
prepping the whole car up.
Yeah. I mean, I scrubbed some of it with a cloth and vacuumed it. And came out pretty good. Car smells really good right now.
Until two of us road tripping it for 2,000 miles.
Yeah. I didn't put any tire shine on it. Clean the wheels.
Yeah, we'll do that right before the show.
Put a little spray wax on there and help get the dust
Keep
off.
the dust off.
And I packed basic tools, my spare fuel pump, fluids.
Excellent.
I don't know what else.
No, we're good
Not
to go.
much else I can bring.
Yep.
So can't handle it with that. Then
We got this.
I mean, people drive worse cars way further
Mm-hmm.
without taking care of them.
Yep.
So
I think we'll be okay.
it'll be fine. It'll be awesome.
I get cars in the shop all the time that got in accidents out here that have, Oklahoma plates or Texas plates or some faraway destination, and the cars are pretty horrible in general. So we'll be okay.
Mm-hmm. All right, and yeah, that's about it. Oh, you went to Southern New Hampshire Cars and Coffee and Dairy?
Yeah, we had the mini cars and coffee.
Mhm.
Mini as in small, not mini as in Mini Coopers.
Well, it was the first one, so how was the turnout?
It was a lot was packed.
Cool.
Probably, yeah, 75, 100
It was
cars.
a nice day.
Yeah, it was a beautiful day. Yeah, it was nice. It's at the coffee factory, as the one in Salem is, just a different location. Speaking of which, if you are local, that is this Sunday. We will not be there because we'll be at Radwood, but
Oh, so it's back. Oh, it's only back to back because it was rained
because
out.
one was rained out. Yeah,
Right.
they do it there every other weekend.
Okay.
But one was a rain out, so it's pushed ahead a week. So now it's back to back this particular time. So that's the Salem, New Hampshire Cars and Coffee this Sunday,
Cool.
8 a.m.
Cool. And you took the
68 Camaro.
yeah,
Yeah, back on the road.
nice.
I think we talked about that already. Yeah, we did.
Yeah, I'm just saying you took it out and drove it finally.
I did. Yeah, second appearance this year.
Awesome. All right. Anything else?
Nope, that's podcast.
That's a
Yeah.
podcast. Wrap it up. 7 minutes in. New record. All right. We have a topic tonight
We do.
because you don't want to hear us talk about ourselves all the time.
Apparently they do because they keep listening. But we'd like to keep a little variety going here.
Yeah.
We haven't
So-
had any guests for a while, so we think that our project car updates have gotten a little long in the tooth.
Mm-hmm. All right. So, Brad, have you ever wondered where wheels come from?
Without making obvious stork jokes. No, but yes. The history of wheels is interesting.
Because they pretty much make a car. Because without wheels, it
A boat.
doesn't do anything.
It's
It's not really a boat.
a sinking boat.
But yeah.
Yeah. It's a really unsuccessful airplane.
And then we'll talk about what makes a quote-unquote fake wheel.
Okay.
But we'll circle back to that.
Mm-hmm.
So, interestingly enough, I didn't know this before. Wheels, and it makes sense now. Wheels never existed naturally in nature.
No, they did not. Why would you think they did?
I don't
know. Where did you think the indigenous wheel tree came from?
I don't know. Like, there's no. Yeah, but like the basically, people explain like the reason why people wanted to fly was because they saw birds doing it.
Yeah.
So why not figure out how to fly?
Okay.
But how would you figure out that you could use a circular thing to roll over stuff if you've never seen it done before?
Because while wheels, as a wheel, might not exist in nature, roundish shaped objects have.
Yeah.
So maybe early humans saw an orange rolling down a hill and was like, oh, I wonder how I can get down the hill that fast. So they put a board on top of an orange and it went from
Squished
there.
it?
Well, and then it became,
It-
round shaped rocks.
It was
and-
probably logs used to move heavy things.
Sure. Probably rocks first before there were logs. I'm sure cavemen found rocks that rolled fairly easily, and they'd put something on top of it and roll it down the hill.
Actually, the caveman and the wheel thing is a huge misnomer.
I'm not saying anything about the caveman and the wheel. I'm just saying the caveman had a rock. I'm sure they rolled things down the hill on a rock, not a wheel.
How would it stay on the rock?
Not very well, but
Does-
it moved at distances, and they put it back on the rock and move another distance.
Does a rolling rock gather moss?
No, but it makes a shitty beer.
So yeah, 100% human invention.
Of course. Just like the car. Also, strangely enough, not present in nature, Andrew. Just in case the podcast listeners are keeping score of all the revelations that Andrew's going to come up with
I'm
tonight.
just saying. So it wasn't until like 5,500 years ago that the wheel was invented
Mm-hmm.
to make pottery.
Okay.
And then it took another 300 years, they estimate, for people to actually use it for locomotion. Because it was basically came down to carpentry. You had to make a round wheel out
Yep.
of wood,
Okay.
and it took like also metal tools. So now you're into the Bronze Age,
Mm-hmm.
and then it wasn't just the invention of the wheel. It wasn't like poof, there's a wheel, and okay, what do we do with this? It was like now you had to figure out how to attach this wheel to an axle, and
Mm-hmm.
then the axle to a cart.
Which was difficult because carts hadn't been invented yet because there were no wheels.
Right. They probably had sleds to drag things. But that was probably the big watershed moment was when they figured out how to attach those three things together, and then you actually got locomotion.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Another 5,000 years from then, locomotion became a song.
yes.
All right. Excellent. Keep up the timeline here.
So I mean, the cartoon myth of like the Monroe caveman, like making the wheel.
Right. It's
Or
not
like,
true.
No, not true at all.
So why did they have Geico?
I don't know.
Interesting.
But I don't want to dwell too much on wheels before the automobile existed, because, I mean, that's like thousands of years of history and whatever.
Yeah, well, it's interesting to me that wheels were not invented for moving things. They're made for a pottery wheel.
Well, stoneware, yeah, was
Yeah.
a human invention that's been around for a long
I
time.
do like how you're differentiating these human inventions tonight. It's very.
Well,
I'm learning a lot of things that humans have invented as opposed to
well,
as
I
opposed
mean,
to
if you want
in
to,
nature or invented by other animals.
you could, claim that we couldn't figure it out on ourselves and it was aliens.
No,
But okay, then there you go, human inventions.
right. But I'm just saying you don't have to differentiate that. The wheel was a human invention. Yes, we're aware. The pottery, stoneware was a human invention. Yes,
Okay,
we're aware.
fine. I'm just saying.
All right.
So
You can keep doing it. It's quite entertaining.
I will. All right, let's talk about the basic components of the wheel.
Okay.
So the hub, which is the center,
Mm-hmm.
and where the wheel
Invented by and coined the term by a human.
yes,
Yes. All right.
where
I'll
the
stop
wheel
now.
attaches to the suspension spokes, connect the hub to the rim of the wheel,
Mm-hmm.
and if you call the wheels rims,
You're wrong.
kittens and puppies get killed.
Mm-hmm.
So don't do it.
Unless you use a Z.
No.
Then it's okay.
It's terrible. Don't do it.
Yeah, you don't have rims in your car. Well, you do, but you have a whole wheel.
I have a whole wheel.
Yeah.
A rim is a part of them.
Yeah.
Uh,
It's pedantic, but it's annoying, and I agree. We should not call them rims.
no, I don't really know anybody that calls them rims.
I feel most non-car people call them rims.
Yeah.
So.
And even then, it was like that was a cool thing to call them if you were a rapper
In like
20,
2001.
20 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, whatever. First wheels on a car. What were they made of?
I thought we were talking about time. What time are we talking about here? First cars obviously had wheels, correct?
Yeah.
All right, just checking.
All right. What were they made of?
Wood.
They're adapted wood
A
from
lot of them
wagon
had,
wheels.
Yeah, a lot of them had no rubber tires. They'd either have a metal lip that acted as a tire.
Hmm. On the rim.
Yeah, went around the rim. It was a metal lip around the rim. It
Uh,
would be made by the same people who made the metal rings that held barrels together.
oh, see, I didn't know that.
Because it was the same basic concept.
I believe that person though would also be called a wheelwright if you made wheels.
Well,
For
when
wagons?
when you made the metal band around the edge, you weren't the wheelwright, but you were the wheelwright if you created the whole wheel. Yeah.
Okay. So, and they were usually like a 6 or an 8 spoke design.
They were almost always even in the beginning because it was easier
Mm-hmm.
to create the.
I think they just always were
Yeah.
even.
It was easier to make it work.
And they came off straight from the hub to the rim. It worked. They were super heavy. Usually, a lot of times they used artillery wheels.
From like cannons and stuff.
Yeah, because they're meant for holding heavy objects like cannons. A car at the time would have been
Mhm.
insanely heavy
Oh,
because
for
they were
sure.
like giant. Because you couldn't make a car like super small.
Yeah, and they were made out of wood and steel.
Yeah.
Yeah, and iron.
And like early tire tech was also super primitive. Apparently, you just get flats.
They were pretty much
Constantly.
like bicycle tires now.
Yeah.
The closest thing to early tires would be a bicycle tire, and not like a fancy multiply mountain bike tire. Like your simple road bike tire,
Mm-hmm.
that you would buy at Walmart,
Yep.
was very similar. It had tube inside of it because you couldn't have. There was no way to. The wheels weren't airtight, so you couldn't have an air-filled tire. You needed a tube to support the tire, and
Yep.
then the tire outside of the tube.
And I didn't realize this. You'd have to change the tire with the wheel still attached to the car,
Mm-hmm.
and you'd unbolt the rim, and then somehow support the car.
With a jack.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And swap the tire off, and then put it back on.
Yeah, it wasn't much different than today, except you unbolted it from the outside of the hub, outside of the spokes instead of the inside of the spokes. So,
I just feel like you'd have to do it a lot on the
like,
side of the road.
yeah, well, you definitely
And
did.
it was super annoying.
But I mean, like today, you can't change a tire without taking the wheel off the car, so that hasn't changed.
No, the wheel would have to stay on the car.
But the rim came off, so it's kind of like taking the wheel off.
Okay.
You unbolted it from the opposite end that you do now, but it was the same basic concept.
Mm-hmm.
Big trucks did this until the '80s with the split rims. The 5-spoke design and the big Mack dump trucks in like the '60s, '70s, and '80s. They had that big heavy cast 5-spoke section with these huge 2-inch bolts on the edges of them.
Mm-hmm.
And when you change the tire, you would actually break the rim from the wheel and change the tire and put it back on again in the same style that the early cars were.
Mm-hmm.
And those were super dangerous too because people get killed all the time by those things.
Why, they just get unbolted?
I don't know I just know they're considered dangerous. I'm not even sure. I don't know big truck stuff other than the basic concept of it.
I know my dad said when they were doing tires on buses, they had to, when they inflate them or mount them, they'd have them in a cage area.
Because they put so much pressure to make the bead sit.
Yeah, I guess. Kind of makes sense. But have you ever heard of the Rouge Whitworth hub?
Rudge.
Rudge.
Yeah. That was the first design of like a bolt-on style hub, right? Like a center lock. Yeah.
Yeah. And apparently it's still used, like the design was so good, that's basically what all center locks are based on.
Okay, so on a split rim, the tire is held in place by a locking ring,
Mm-hmm.
and that's where the dangerous part comes in when it's full of air and you're putting that locking ring on it can explode, and the ring can kill you.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. No
So Rudge Whitworth was a bike manufacturer.
good. Mm-hmm.
So again, a lot of early car stuff came from bicycles.
Mm-hmm. And if you look at bicycles today, they still rock a center locking style wheel. Single hub goes through it, and
Yeah, they
it's
do.
got a bolt on one end. Still the same Rudge hub.
Well, no, that's
Similar.
it's just an axle that goes through the wheel.
Mm-hmm. But so was the Rudge similar style, except it had threads on one end of it.
Nope.
No?
Nope. Nope.
Okay.
No.
Tell me
I'll
why
tell
I'm
you.
wrong, sir.
I will. So bicycle wheels. I gotta explain what bicycle wheels, how they work first, because it'll make more sense.
Okay.
So bicycle wheels use wire spokes, also known as a suspension wheel.
Okay.
And think about it this way: the wheel hub hangs from the top spokes as it turns. The spokes don't actually support the hub from the bottom because they're not strong enough. You're technically hanging off the top edge of the wheel as it goes around, and it deforms slightly as it hits the ground.
Because of the weight.
Mm-hmm. So the wheel's not so much, like I said, it's not so much supporting it from the bottom, but it hangs like a suspension bridge.
Okay.
And of course, this style of wheel was lighter than wooden ones,
Yeah, for sure.
which makes sense if you're on a human-powered bicycle.
Yeah, you wouldn't want wooden wheels.
No, it'd be super
Plus,
heavy.
you crash to get a splinter.
Or worse. And early bicycles used a radial spoke design, which again, the spokes just come straight out of the hub.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know this about bicycles, but it's okay for like a human-powered bike. But if you put like a motorized engine on there, the amount of
the
torque
will just
it'll just
spin them. Yeah.
and just twist them.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So that brought us to
Like a cross-hatching of the spokes.
yeah, semi-tangential spokes is what they call it. Or that was kind of what they early called it.
Semi-tangential?
Yeah, it sounds totally made up.
Yeah, it does. That's a weird name.
Apparently, it's more common in the modern term as cross spokes.
Mm-hmm. That's what I've heard as cross spokes.
Yeah.
Because if you look at your bicycle hub and you look where the bicycle spoke meets the hub versus the wheel,
Mm-hmm.
it won't be directly above where it meets the wheel to be
No,
on
they
the
cross
opposite
each other.
side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this makes the wheel a lot stronger.
Yeah, especially when it comes to applying force to it.
Yep.
Because it has more area to travel through. It's
Well,
not just directly bolted to it, so it's got more angle and more. It's like a curve. It's like a curve instead of a straight piece of metal will be stronger.
it's counteracting the forces.
Yeah,
It's pulling against each other.
pushing back.
So it's kind of because it's like super weird. Like, why would you? Like, I never really thought about it. Like, it seems like wire wheels are super fragile, but they're not.
No, they're pretty strong.
Yeah, they're not.
Yeah.
They're not the strongest thing, but they are.
No, but for what, considering the materials available at the time,
Yeah.
they're very strong. They're stronger than the straight spoked wooden wheel, and they're stronger than a straight spoked wire wheel. They're fairly strong. They ran them in racing right until the 70s in some cars.
Oh, we'll get there.
Yeah.
So, what about that Rouge Whitworth hub? So, in the 1900s, there were several competing QD or quick detach wheel designs
Okay, so center lock.
using a center lock
Yep.
nut on a wire wheel. Because changing tires was such a friggin' pain in the ass,
Mm-hmm.
they wanted a quicker way to do it. So, the hub was designed by John Puig, who was the son of the company founder. Because
Okay.
he was an avid motorist and was
Okay.
annoyed with changing.
His tires.
Flat tires.
Yeah. He wanted to drive, not wrench.
So if you've never seen one of these, there's a tapered spline snout with threads that comes off the hub. So it's bolted to the hub pretty like semi-permanently. Like you just leave it.
It's bolted to the hub like a wheel would be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you just leave it. And then the wheel has a matching tapered bore with splines in it, and then it's secured with a single wheel nut, which either has wings on it or it's just a hex nut.
Mm-hmm.
But the simplicity in the design was not some elaborate method of locking the wheel nut that other ones had. It was that it just used regular threads
Just
on
backwards.
on the driver's side
Yep.
and reverse threads on the passenger side.
Right, so when the wheel is rolling forward, it wouldn't loosen up automatically.
Yeah, well, apparently it's because the wheels naturally wobble in a elliptical fashion,
Mm-hmm.
and as they do that, they grab the nut and tighten it.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, so it made the wheel self-tightening, or better yet, as they said, not self-loosening.
Yeah, exactly.
And the different threads is why race cars with center locks are usually have them painted different colors for each side of the car,
usually red and blue.
so you don't confuse them.
Which the center lock technology is still used today. The same basic setup.
For endurance racing, yeah, it's faster.
Formula One cars, endurance racing cars.
But not NASCAR.
Nope, NASCAR is a.
Even though they're all about the oldest technology possible.
But somehow they forgot this was older technology.
Yeah. And then, so this style of wheel worked so well that it was quickly adopted to Grand Prix cars.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
And, it made wheel and tire changes very quick and proved robust enough for racing.
Yeah, it was also used in most street cars at the time too. If you look at a lot of the fancy higher end cars of the 20s and 30s,
Yeah.
like the Duesenbergs and the Packards, and
Mm-hmm.
they all have these style knockoff wheels.
And it was, those cars had those Grand Prix cars, even in the 20s and 30s, had sometimes huge amounts of horsepower
Mm-hmm.
and hit really fast speeds.
Yeah, they had 150, 180 mile an hour cars.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, in that era,
Yeah.
which is crazy.
So another interesting thing, Carlo Barani
Of the famous Barani Wire Wheel Company, I assume?
licensed the hub design
Okay.
in the 20s. He became the official supplier to Alfa Romeo, Lancia,
Mm-hmm.
and Bianchi.
And eventually Ferrari.
And who drove Alfa Romeo and then later ran the racing team?
Who did? Barani?
Nope. You know
Oh,
who it is.
Enzo Ferrari.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah.
So
Already
then,
went there, yeah.
then Barani wheels were original equipment on Ferraris from
Mm-hmm.
46 to 66.
Yeah, for sure. And even after that, too, I think, because
All
Daytonas
they're
and stuff.
optional all the way up to 84.
Okay. Because I know Daytonas and stuff in the 70s certainly could still get a Barani wheel option.
Mm-hmm. And early wire wheels.
84?
Yeah.
You get a 308 with Baranis?
supposedly optional up to 84.
Huh.
Um,
That's interesting.
yeah. So that early wire wheel center lock hub conversion, one of the first aftermarket parts for cars.
Like a universal aftermarket part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
People would be converting their own cars because it was easier to change tires. And for the time, it was the best mix of strength and lightness until manufacturing of alloy wheels became more prevalent. And otherwise, if it wasn't a fancy sports car, once cars became, driven more commonly, out of like the Model T era. They came with stamped wheels.
That does not look right.
Brad's throwing me a 308 GTS
Umberani wheels.
Umberani wire wheels.
It does not look right.
It's kind of weird, but
Yeah.
it's a thing.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's traditional, but it's not pretty. Anyway, carry on. Sorry, I just
So
semi-tangential speech here about Umberani wheels.
so Brad, what's the number one thing you can change in a car to make it more personal?
Wheels. Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, I've been taught since a child that the wheels and stance will make or break a car. And not meaning stance in the 2015 version of the word, where it means stuffed on the ground with lots of camber, but just how the car sits in general.
Mm-hmm.
We've joked about this in the past. We need to take that word back.
Yeah.
Yeah, stance doesn't mean stanced. It means
I say stuff has the right
how
stance
the car
still.
sits.
Yeah. That's
No, you and I say it for sure in conversation, but you can't say it on, say, a Facebook group without somebody be like, that car's not stanced.
Yeah,
But no, every car has a stance.
it's true. So do you know when aftermarket alloy wheels started to become a thing? Because
Probably in the 50s, if I had to guess.
yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Because there's tons of alloy wheel choices now, and most cars come standard with alloy wheels, but it wasn't the case
No.
all the time.
No, because steel wheels were simple and easy.
Yep, you could make them out of rolled steel. You could roll the rim.
At some point, we missed
you-
in our conversation here, we went from spokes to solid steel discs. I'm not sure where that happened in time.
You were
But-
looking up 308s on wire wheels.
Were you talking about it?
Yeah.
And I missed it?
Yeah.
I apologize to the audience for having a sidebar conversation there.
Yeah, because unless it was a race car, like I said,
Yep.
it didn't, it would have like fancy wire wheels.
Mhm.
It was just a normal pedestrian car. It had a stamped steel center and a rolled rim, and they were welded together, and you threw a hubcap on it if it was even that fancy. And everything had steel wheels for years and years and years, and it wasn't until the 50s, really, especially on American cars, that you
Mhm.
could get an optional aluminum wheel, maybe on a car, depending on the brand.
I'm trying to think of what was the first car with optional aluminum wheels. Do you know?
The first car with aluminum wheels in general was a Type 35 Bugatti.
Yeah, the big six spokes.
Yes.
Yep, and that was
With the
1928?
24.
24.
With the integrated brake drums.
Mm-hmm. Those are cool.
Because they also used the wheel as a heat sink.
Mm-hmm.
And then,
Which was later copied by other manufacturers,
Yep.
notably Pontiac.
yeah, Pontiac was in the 60s. You get
Yeah.
the wide track wheels. Those-
64, I think, was the first year of that.
Might have been 60 or 62.
Was it that early?
Yeah. I believe it was 60 or 62.
Hmm.
And they had a rolled steel rim, and the aluminum center was bolted.
And the aluminum center was also the brake drum.
And interestingly, I guess when you bought a car with that package, it came with a special adapter, so when the car went in for service, like at a regular gas station, they could balance those wheels because the center part was so big.
Wouldn't fit the balancing machine.
Yeah. But anyway, we're getting a little too far ahead.
1960, yeah, you're right.
You could get 55 Eldorado with aluminum wheels.
Yep, I
Plus
remember those
EAs,
too.
yep.
Yep.
We'll get there though. So let's explain what's an alloy wheel and what's a mag wheel, because they are different, sort of.
Well, it's the material it's made out of. A mag is magnesium, and
Yeah.
alloy is
They are one
aluminum.
and the same, and technically so are steel wheels.
Well, they're all a form of alloy.
Exactly.
But, yeah, it's,
Now we're being pedantic.
yeah, very much so.
So an alloy, if you've forgotten chemistry class, is two different materials forged together.
Mm-hmm.
And steel is iron mixed with carbon. That's what makes it an iron. That's what makes it an alloy. And magnesium alloy is predominantly magnesium mixed with other metals like copper, tin, or aluminum, because otherwise magnesium and aluminum would be too brittle in their raw form to be used as a wheel.
Right.
You mix them with other metals to make them more malleable and not shatter. Instead, they bend. And when
Before they shatter.
yeah, and when the mixture is off, like on 90s Mitsubishi wheels, they're real soft.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're terrible.
Yeah.
The cheese wheels.
Mm-hmm. And interesting, so magnesium is like one of the lightest structural metals, but it's also highly flammable.
Yeah, it's not great for car parts.
It is, as long as the car doesn't catch on fire.
Right. So it's not great for car parts.
Yeah,
Okay.
cars don't catch on fire all too often.
Not too often.
Yeah.
But like wood is a great material for building houses. It's also very flammable. So
Houses don't catch on fire too often, though.
right. But when they do,
Yeah.
They're made out of combustible materials.
Well, it's also cheap. That's why.
Hmm.
So in the early days, apparently this would also be called bimetal wheels, alloy,
Okay.
because two
Yeah.
metals.
Makes sense.
Um, and we already talked about the Bugatti. So even though like Bugatti came out with those wheels, they didn't really catch on in the 20s.
Well,
Wire wheel.
they were expensive and hard to
Yeah.
manufacture. And actually, if you look at a Bugatti wheel, they're not finished great either. They're very rough cast.
Yeah. So wire wheels reigned supreme until the 60s in Grand Prix racing.
Hmm.
And crazy as it may seem, so wire wheels stood up to the most powerful Grand Prix cars of the day. Even speeds over 200 miles
Say
an
some of
hour,
those 200-mile-an-hour cars in the
Yep.
60s.
or 500 horsepower plus on those early 60s F1 cars.
Yeah.
Crazy fast.
Thanks to the cross-spoke design.
Yeah. But really, alloy wheels came from post World War II California, Southern California
Where
specifically.
most awesome car stuff started from.
Well, that's where the aerospace industry was
Yeah.
during the war, which grew exponentially because it had to happen very fast to keep up. So there were a bunch of hot rodders and engineers that learned about a bunch of exotic lightweight metals while they were building airplanes during the war.
And said, wait a second, we can use this
Yeah,
stuff.
when the war was over, they're like, hey, there's a good way to use this stuff. So, wire wheels were the standard, but they could be improved upon.
Hmm.
Because, there's a bunch of early hot rods, especially from like the 30s, that still use wire wheels.
Mhm.
Like when you see those
A
cars.
lot of them use a forward wire wheel because they have that big center section
Mm-hmm.
and short spokes, so they're real
Mhm.
strong.
Mm-hmm. But in 46, there's an engineer named Ted Hallebrand
That's a name I know. Hallebrand, anyway, not his first name.
who worked with magnesium in the aircraft industry and was into early circle drag racing. So you know where this is going. He realized the material could be used to build wheels.
Yeah, he made magnesium wheels.
This is early on, yeah.
Mhm.
So these wheels would be stronger, lighter, and safer than wire wheels because they're a solid piece. And they also realized like if you put lightweight wheels on a car, you gain horsepower without much work.
Without making horsepower.
Yeah.
Unsprung weight is a huge power adder, essentially. That much less weight to turn is a lot more effective than making 2 or 3 more horse.
Mm-hmm. And then, the cool thing, like I didn't realize I thought they were just called Halbrands. Halibrands actually have a name. They're sprints.
Sprints. Yeah, there's a couple different Hallebrand designs, but the Sprint is the common one.
Yeah.
It's like a 5-spoke, but then in between the spokes, it's flat and has like a little kidney bean relief cut in it.
And they call it a big window
Okay.
in slang. They're Halbrand big
Big
windows.
windows, the big opening.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, I didn't know any of that. Kind of interesting.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, they ran them on like midget cars, Indy cars, Cunningham sports cars had them.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the early hot rod guys ran them when they got them, surplus from race teams.
Yeah,
So
they're
they
probably
were
super
everywhere.
expensive. So
Now they are.
yeah, but it's pretty cool. So they took first place at Indy 500 in 46, and then every winner until 1966.
So that's 20 years.
Same wheel.
Halibrands,
Yeah.
same wheel. It's pretty good.
That is impressive. And of course, like you said, they're ubiquitous on Cobras, GT40s, and they're all of the Cunningham cars that went to Le Mans.
I picture them on Cunninghams.
Yeah.
I don't picture them on GT40s and Cobras.
I definitely picture them, yeah.
A slightly different style though. Not the.
I said Halbrands in
Yeah.
general. I don't know if they're the same ones.
They were a
but-
different style. They weren't the Sprints. The Sprints are what I picture on the Cunningham race cars.
Mhm. And of course, like you said, they eventually made it to Hot Rodders and
Mhm.
Bonneville Salt Flats. And
They still make them today.
they're not made by Halbrand though.
They make a.
There's companies that licensed and make them. Yeah.
Is that a Halibran company out there anymore?
No.
Hmm.
No.
Regardless, I know they still make the same design.
The name is owned by some other company that makes them, and they remake the design, but they're not true magnesium anymore. They're aluminum because.
Oh, they're definitely not magnesium
No.
anymore. Yeah.
So that'd be the problem. So you have your race car, and your magnesium wheels are super lightweight, but if you cut a tire and the tire left the wheel at speed, and you've got this wheel dragging across pavement, throwing sparks, it can ignite, and then you've got this massive fire. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you probably have other magnesium parts in your race car, and then it's it's pretty crazy. Like when Block's Cosworth went off, there was a ton of magnesium parts in that car. There was like a
Which
sparkler.
seems late for a bunch of magnesium parts.
No, Group A cars. It's 20 years ago. They still use magnesium in maybe not as much modern cars, but it was still being used for a while. So my research points to the first aftermarket wheel company being American Racing.
Rocket Racing now produces Halibran wheels.
Yeah. And apparently American Racing was originally American Racing Equipment, and basically it's because they produce wheels in the sizes for street cars.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And,
much narrower.
yeah, and like, you know, Inky also started in 1950, but in Japan.
So we didn't know much about them.
Yeah, but it's interesting because like, um, the research I found, like, it's Romeo Palamides designed a magnesium wheel for, it was a DeSoto drag car that was featured on the November 56 cover of Hot Rod. And the wheels that are on there look like early American Racing, like, slot mags.
Okay. Or Enki's lot mags.
Mm.
Mm.
See, that's the weird thing, right? So, like, well, here, I'll start with this. So, like, again, hot rod culture is kind of the genesis for all custom car culture.
Mm-hmm. No question.
No question. Like, 100%. That post-World War II hot rodding culture is what spurns, that's how we got to where we are today.
Mm-hmm.
And we could do a whole thing on that. So maybe that's something in the future. Put a pin in that.
Yeah.
Anyways, so like I said, Enki in Japan showed up around 1950, who is also coincidentally the largest wheel builder
Today.
today.
Yeah, they do a lot of OEM stuff still.
OEMs.
Too. Yep.
And I didn't realize they had a factory in Indiana
Mm-hmm.
too. That's pretty cool.
Well, it makes sense because a lot of the cars now for the Japanese brands are made in America
here
as well. Yeah.
And this is where the stuff gets kind of muddy, because it's like, American Racing probably came up with a lot of the first designs, like the torque thrust,
Mm-hmm.
and
It's definitely theirs.
your favorite, the Libra,
That's
also known as the Daisy,
Mm-hmm.
and a couple other wheels. But like, Inky has versions of them too
Mm-hmm.
that very similar.
Well, we just touched on the slot mag.
Inky has slot mags.
Yeah.
And
I think they made the ones that you see on, like, dealer optional equipment on Datsun Zs.
no,
or-
that was American Racing.
Were those American Racing ones?
Yeah,
Interesting.
it's weird, right?
Yeah.
And like the big thing that was optional was the Libras on Datsuns.
Mm-hmm.
And what are your wheels? Do they have any stampings on them?
Not that I've ever looked, other than like sizes and stuff.
Because supposedly the ones that are stamped with SCCA were the ones that were for like competition.
Hmm.
So you should check them out.
I'll check them out. I don't think they would be because they're kind of a small. They're narrow. They're not really wide.
Yeah.
But
Just a streetcar version. Yeah.
I have no idea what era they're from. I know they're a raw, unpainted finish, which is uncommon to see in them.
Yeah, I did come across, and I didn't write it down. There's some specific DuPont color. That's what Halibrands all came in.
Yeah, kind of like weird gray, gunja
Yeah.
gray. Yeah.
But anyway, so the other thing that American Racing did, they also had a version of mini lights.
Yep.
They're called Silverstones.
Yep.
So mini lights are an English wheel
8-spoke design.
that everybody else copied.
Mm. Panasport.
Yep.
And my favorite, Watanabe.
And there's like a bunch. Yeah, Enki, Comp E's. Is that what they're saying?
I think it's just comp.
Comps.
Well, it's a silent E, I assume.
Yeah.
But yes, the Yankee comp is a 8-spoke design. But here's the thing: how many 8-spoke designs could you make? So they're all going to
Exactly.
be the same, but slightly different.
Exactly. So we touched on some of the history of wheels, and a lot of the early designs came from like American Racing.
Mm-hmm.
Torque thrusts are like my favorite
Mm-hmm.
of that early style wheel.
Well, if you look at a lot of the early wheels, early aftermarket wheels, they were all 5 spokes because most cars were 5 lugs, and it was easy to make a design that went around the 5 lugs.
Mm-hmm.
That's why they were 5 spokes.
Well, that's why Libras are 4.
That's why Libras are 4 spokes
'Cause
because
they're
it's a torque thrust style wheel
four
for a
spoke
4-spoke car.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now you've got
Or 4-lug car. Excuse me.
on the Camaro, you don't have torque thrusts. You've got. They look. I think they're called 200Ss because they're 5-spoke,
Yeah, they're wide. They're actually the same as the Libra,
but they're 5-spoke.
but they're a 5-spoke version of the Libra.
So I believe those are called the 200S.
Yeah, people call them Coke bottle mags
Yeah.
because the spokes have a Coke bottle curved design
Yeah.
to them. But that's actually more what the Libra design is than
Mm-hmm.
Torque thrust, because torque thrust is a rounder spoke,
Yeah.
whereas the square they're more square.
But they hollow cast the spokes to make
Mm-hmm.
them light.
Oh yeah, they're very light.
I mean, the point of all this is that there really isn't such a thing as, quote, fake wheels. You can have
Um,
wheels of varying quality,
yeah, say quality is where you get into the fake wheels versus not fake wheels.
but there's only so many designs.
Yeah.
And some are more classic than others.
Mm-hmm.
And when something works and it's aesthetically pleasing, people
Yeah.
copy
Well,
it.
like I said, how many ways can you do an 8-spoke?
Exactly.
There's not that much room
It's a
to make them
circle.
different. It's a circle with 8 spokes. You can vary the spoke design a
You
little
can
bit.
try to put a teddy bear in there.
Yeah, which I've owned a set of in the past
Yeah.
by Renault.
Or those weird Venetian blind ones you have.
I don't have Venetian blind wheels.
What are the hell those ones that are in the front of the...
Sentra 7s. They're not Venetian blinds.
Whatever. That's
They're
what they look like to
they're
me.
like Dorito wheels. The Venetian blind wheels are the ones you've seen on like donks in the 90s that
Oh,
have
okay.
like actual Venetian blind looking to them. Anyway, we're off topic now. Where were we at? Okay, so there's only so many 8-spoke designs you can make.
Right.
So you could say that a Watanabe is a copy of a Panasport, is a copy of Mini Light, is a copy of a Sprint.
Mm-hmm.
But most wheel enthusiasts could look at any one of those wheels and tell you which one it is.
Yeah.
When you get into a copy, you get into a manufacturer who's making a wheel to try to get the market share of the brand name's wheel by copying it and casting it off as the same. That's when you run into a problem, I think.
So if it's slightly different, it's just
okay.
imitation and it's okay?
It's not imitation, it's just the limitations of an 8-spoke design or limitations of a 5-spoke design. There's only so many designs you can make. But if you make a wheel and you market it as a Watanabe and it's not, now you've made a fake wheel.
Yeah.
If you make a wheel that looks like a Watanabe but has a slightly different taper and doesn't have fake, casting marks where a Watanabe wheel would have casting marks, so it doesn't look exactly like a Watanabe, then you're not making a copy.
Yeah.
I think that's where the difference lies.
Yeah.
If you're trying to pass off something as that, but it's not. Like in fashion, you can buy a fake Gucci purse versus a real Gucci purse. It's not. I don't. Is Gucci even a purse?
I think so.
Okay,
I
good.
don't know.
It's a brand. I know that. Or was it a Fendi bag? That's what I was trying to think of.
Sure.
So you could try. You could make a fake Fendi bag and sell it for $15 in a market in New York, versus $400 for one in a store at a mall somewhere.
Right.
You're trying to emulate and sell somebody else's intellectual property as your own. If your wheel is similar but not marketed as the same, I'm fine with it. I don't care. There's only so many ways you can make it look.
Well, no, you can have a wheel that's inspired by stuff.
100%. Totally okay. Inspired by is how life works.
Yeah.
People learn from other people. You have to be inspired by something. Everything was inspired by something. I'm looking at a picture on the wall behind you of a Lamborghini Countach. Somebody could say that it was, Lamborghini's ripoff of the Lotus, Esprit design. So it's a wedge. They're all very similar. Everything's inspired by something else. And when something comes out in an era, that style is popular at that era because that's the style at the time. In the mid-'90s, every car had that kind of, rounded jelly bean bar of soap shape. It wasn't because they were copying one another. It's because everybody was inspired by everybody else. That's okay.
Like black fender liner cladding on every crossover now.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not a copy.
Yeah.
It's just somebody's inspired by somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
And if you buy something that fits your budget and it's still a quality piece and you're not pretending it's something it's not, it's fine. Who cares? Not everybody's going to run work wheels. Not everybody's going to run VBS wheels. There's got to be another market out there for other people. I don't want to spend $2,000 on a car and $4,000 on wheels. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Just not going to do it.
Yeah, so that's that. I mean...
Well, the whole internet argument is about, friends don't let friends run rotas. Well, guess what? I encourage you to run rotas because they're fine.
Yeah, and they don't pass them off as something else.
No, they're called rotas.
Yeah.
If you buy a rota and put a Volk sticker on it, then you're an idiot. But
Yeah.
don't do that, and it's fine.
Yeah.
Most people could look at the wheel and tell you it's not what it's supposed to be. And the people that can't tell, doesn't matter anyway.
It also comes with, like, brand recognition. Like, like a brand like 1552. They do have some awesome original designs.
But even their
But
name, an original design, it's inspired by something.
yeah,
They're inspired by motorsports in the 80s.
yeah.
You know, they have a flat five-spoke design, looks very similar to the wheel that came out of F40 Le Mans.
Hmm.
You know, it's not. I'm not going to call them a fake brand or a
No,
knockoff brand. They're a legitimate brand of wheel that makes a quality product.
yeah, because
So,
they just came out with a wheel that looks like a Delta Integrale wheel, which is
right.
actually like a comp motive wheel.
hmm I think the Delta Integrale wheel was made by Motive, wasn't it?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's inspired by that.
Yep. Yeah. I think that there's no problem with that. If it's something that was available in the market in the past and it's not available anymore, and he makes something that looks similar, more power to you.
Hmm.
Just don't try to pass it off as what it's not, and don't try to actively steal that brand's recognition. I think that's where the difference lies.
Hmm.
So I think you have some of these um, companies that are less reputable.
Hmm.
You know, people make fun of Rhoda because the go-to wheel, but Rhoda is an OEM manufacturer as well now. So, and they make their aftermarket wheels in the same conditions they make their OEM quality wheels.
Yep.
So there's no reason to say it's like a quality issue. And people post a picture of a broken Rhoda. Yeah, that happens, but I could find pictures of broken BBS wheels too. Like, things happen.
Hmm.
I've had a couple sets of Rhodas and never had an issue. You know, it's not a. You've had a set of Rhodas for 20 years almost, never had an issue.
So also speaking of inspired by, BBS RS,
Yeah,
again, an often replicated wheel,
but what is it inspired by in the first place?
wire wheels.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's an alloy version of a wire wheel.
Exactly.
So,
And I mean that is one of the most aesthetically pleasing style of wheels ever.
yeah, it works on everything.
It does.
They're two wheel designs that work on everything.
Panasports.
8-spoke, you know, Panasport, Watanabe, Enki Comp 8, etc., etc., etc. And the crosshatch basket weave, which would be the Enki RS style.
And there's about like a million versions of it. You know, there's BBS RSs.
I mean, even BBS themselves makes a million different versions of it
Yeah.
because they have the RS, the RA, the
Yeah.
you know, there's just a bunch of different ones.
I've got HREs that are meshes that look just like
Yeah.
BBSs.
I have Enki 92s, which are a different design. They're a different.
They're a different
take on
mesh.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're a flatter surface. There's no 3 dimension to it. It's just a flat surface with a relief holes
I'm trying
in
to think,
it.
does anyone else make one that looks like an 1892?
I'm sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know it. American Racing makes a BBS, you know,
That's right,
style.
they do.
Yeah. My father has one with Corvette, actually.
No, those are Yankees.
You're right. They're Yankees, which were also sold as American Racings.
Mm-hmm.
Weird.
Right? It's weird.
Yeah.
It's super weird. It's one of the only things that, like,
Which I think the Yankees on his car would have been Yankee 90s?
I don't know.
Might have been 89s, 90s? Yankee 89? Because back in the 80s, he bought those wheels in 85.
Mm-hmm.
All the Yankee wheels had numbers.
That was pretty uncommon
What's that?
to buy an Yankee wheel back then.
He was a dealer. So,
Yeah.
in fact, the wheels that are on my Starion
Yeah.
were bought through his dealership. I have
Mhm.
the receipt and everything, which is why they're kind of cool that I have them now.
Mm-hmm. And then, like, it's like my HREs. I don't know if they're 501s or 502s. Like, I can't tell
Yeah.
because they're just also similar. But regardless,
Yankee 98.
cool.
That's the style of my father's 80 Corvette.
Yeah. Which is one of my favorite. His particular car is probably my favorite third gen Corvette.
It's my favorite late third gen.
Yeah.
For sure.
But-
Because of the stands and the wheels.
Mm-hmm. But anyway, we digress. So yeah, we talked about OEM alloys you could get.
Mm-hmm.
54, you get saber spoke alloy. That's what they were called for Cadillacs.
Okay.
The wide track wheels for Pontiac. And then you get mag wheels by Campagnolo. Is that how you say it?
Campagnolo, yeah. Campies, as they're
Yep.
called in circles.
On Abarth's.
A lot of Italian cars.
Yeah. And then, interestingly, so Ferrari offered their first alloy wheel. So it was the magnesium Cromadora Starburst. That was for road-going versions of the 275 GTB in 1964.
Okay.
And of course,
It's the same basic style they ran right through the 80s.
this is an alternative to the Barani wire spoke. And then, interesting, for competition, Baranis were still used for a few more seasons after they introduced these magnesiums.
Mm-hmm.
And then in 67, a 275 GTB C was the last Ferrari competition car to be raced in anger with traditional wire wheels.
See what you did there.
I did.
Follow his Instagram.
Yeah.
Raised in anger.
And then I was surprised that Corvettes really only had alloy wheels in C3 or no, late C2s with knockoffs.
They had knockoffs, which wasn't. I think they were pretty early actually with the knockoffs.
It's like 64.
My father had them on a 63.
Yeah,
Doesn't mean that they were correct. I don't know for a fact.
they were 63 through like 68, and then they had steel wheels
Excuse me.
like forever until some optional alloy wheel
Yeah, they did.
in the 70s.
A lot of GM performance cars had steel
Mhm.
wheels because they had the rally wheel design they used
Mhm.
on literally everything.
hmm Yeah, that's the other thing. Like certain wheels became a symbol of a brand. Like, what is the aluminum wheel called?
They were 63 to 66 knockoffs.
Yeah. What is the aluminum wheel called that's used in Mercedes?
A Rudge.
A bunt pan? Sometimes people call them bunt pans.
Bunts, they call
Bunts.
them. Bunts,
Okay.
B-U-N-D-T. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what it was. Bunts.
Those were used like on almost every,
People call them the manhole cover.
yeah, almost every model of Mercedes until they came out with those monoblocks, I think, right?
Well, the monoblocks were the AMG style.
Yeah. And that was from like the late 80s through like the 90s.
Yeah, the bunt wheels were 69 to 85.
Mhm.
That's a good long run for a set of wheels.
Yeah, and of course Fuchs. Like
Yeah, they used Porsches for years.
from like early 911s, not the first ones, but like early 911s all the way through like the 80s.
Oh, for sure. I'm trying to see if I could. The according to the internet, the Porsche Fuchsfelge for the first 911 in 1965
Mhm.
was the first forged wheel,
Mhm.
and thus laid the foundation for a great historical development.
Mhm.
That's interesting. Interestingly enough, Fuchs does other wheels. That's the brand.
Yeah.
They make the OEM wheels on a new i3.
Hmm.
I did not know that. Otto Fuchs.
Yep.
This is definitely a.
Wheels go deep,
Yeah, we're going way deep here.
and I mean,
Oh, they also came factory on NSUs.
Yep.
NSU RO80 had
Yep.
Fuchs.
but they were a slightly different design for it.
They weren't the standard Porsche design.
Mhm.
Actually, the RO80 ones are pretty close.
Yeah, they are very close.
Yeah, they're very high offset, but they're very close.
Yeah, inspired by.
Well, yeah, no, the same brand. It's not inspired by. It's just the same design. Kind of like Watanabe's 8 spokes. They have the Type F for front-wheel drive offsets
Mhm.
versus the Type R for the deep, rear drive offsets.
Well, anyway, I hope we shed a little bit of history on wheels.
Yeah, and
'Cause-
we could probably go deeper too if we started to talk about OEMs and OEM manufacturers and where they get their wheels from and why they don't make them themselves.
I didn't know too much about wire wheels because I never really thought about it.
No, I know I like them. One of my dream cars is still an MGB GT chrome bumper car on painted wires.
Painted wires.
Instead of chrome, chrome's kind of gray painted wire.
I didn't
or black
realize.
painted wire.
I didn't realize that. So Jaguar bought the rights to the Whitmore,
Okay, this is the hub design.
Rudge Whitworth hub design, and so they own it,
Interesting.
and that's why it's all on Jaguar cars, like E-types and stuff. It's kind of it's like real interesting.
It goes deep. I think we've only scratched the surface here. I've learned a lot, but we've only scratched the surface.
Well, that's the thing. It gets super crazy when you're starting to alloy wheels.
Yeah, because there's so many manufacturers popped up so quick too.
Yeah, like right in the 50s to the 60s.
Well, I have a bunch of hot rod magazines from the 60s, and there's just tons and tons of advertisements for wheel manufacturers you've never even heard of.
Mm-hmm.
Some that still exist. You have your American Racings and your Western Wheels, and Wolf Racing was a big one in the 60s and 70s, and there's a ton of different ones.
Yeah, I didn't know like the foundry for American Racing was up in Portland, Oregon.
Okay.
So all kinds of neat stuff like that. So, anyways, as we wrap it up here, you can follow us on Facebook, Auto Off Topic Podcast. Follow our YouTube channel, Auto Off Topic. I uploaded a couple of videos, new ones up there. There's one about putting on the Kokomo wheel trim.
I did see that today, actually. I watched that after the work.
And
It was very, very informative when you buy your new old stock Kokomo wheel trims and how to put them on.
Exactly. and and I have a spare set of them. They're Mr. Gasket brand ones.
Which is also bizarre.
Yeah. So I don't know. We have to figure out some way we're gonna give them away, but we'll bring them with us to Radwood, and I don't know. We'll figure out some way to give them away or something.
Yeah.
Maybe the first listener that's there that finds us, if anyone does. I'm thinking.
If they want them.
I'm thinking we're cooler than probably we actually are, but we'll see. And then we've got a hashtag. It's RadVR4, and you can follow that for our trip down there.
Yeah, please do.
And we'll be posting stuff to
We'll
Instagram.
We'll post along the way interesting roadside attractions, maybe.
Mm-hmm. And it will all be done by the co-driver, who won't be driving
Oh, of
at
course.
the time. And yeah, you can follow me on Instagram, Race and Anger. And Brad, where they can find you?
Where they can find me?
Yep.
They can find me at Instagram at TSISS350. I'll be sure to hashtag a RadVR4 tag picked there, so it'll be easier to find it
Mm-hmm.
instead of having to remember TSISS350.
That's right. And as always, keep your cars analog, your wheels knockoff.
No, it doesn't work. Dump it. Start again.
Keep your cars analog, and your wheels
Nope.
wire.
Keep you guys analog and aim for the roses.
Thanks.